At this time, I want to introduce all of us to a phenomenal woman, Miss Sesali Bowen. She's a multifaceted author, media personality, and cultural commentator with a knack for plus-size style. She's the former senior entertainment editor at Nylon Magazine, one of the architects of Refinery 29's Unbothered, and the author of the 2021 memoir, Bad Fat Black Girl, Notes from a Trap Feminist. I'm going to say that again, okay? But do you mind if I say it again? Bad Fat Black Girl,
That's
Notes.
also my social media handle, so
Thank
y'all
you.
go follow me.
Yes. Notes from a Trap Feminist. Cecily is also the creative producer and co-host of Purse First, the only podcast exclusively about female and queer rap. She was born and raised on the south side of Chicago and loves press-on nails and direct deposits. She currently lives in New Jersey, and she's going to speak with us today from her lived experience. Without further ado, I'm going to welcome to the podium Miss Sesali Bowen.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. Obviously, as was already mentioned, I'm Sesali. I am a writer. I am a journalist. I'm an entertainment journalist, specifically very interested in women in hip hop. I know y'all probably wondering, like, so what the hell are you doing here at the Black Women's Health Conference? Like, what that got to do with anything? Well, it's because before I was any of that, I was a fast ass girl. No cap. So, I mean, to be honest, now I'm just a fast ass woman, but you know, we talking about the past right now. Now, specifically, you know, I grew up in Chicago, but actually before I get into that, I kind of just want to get an idea of who's in the room. So real quick, if you are a teenager, raise your hand. Okay. Some of y'all already lying, but it's okay. I ain't gonna say nothing. I ain't gonna call y'all out. If you're in your 20s, raise your hand. Okay. If you are in your 30s, raise your hand. Right, we proud. And I won't go no further than that because then people start lying about their age. People, you know, I ain't gonna go no further than that. My mama taught me never to, ask a woman of a certain age about her age. And so I just like to get an idea of who I'm talking to in the room. So it seems like most of the folks that I'll be talking to are teenagers and or 20s. And that's cool because y'all are actually who I'm talking about. A lot of what I talk about just in my book and what I be talking about here is, what I was like when I was in my teens and what I was when I was in my 20s. I do want to let y'all know now, it's probably going to be a little cussing, this is probably going to be a more candid conversation, and I'm cool with that as long as y'all are. Plus, I know what y'all be listening to, so don't be trying to get up in here acting all, clutching y'all's pearls now when it's me, all right? So when I was younger, from the time I was a toddler until I was in high school, my mother actually worked for a gynecologist in Inglewood, the Inglewood neighborhood of Chicago. Is anybody here familiar with Inglewood? Has anybody ever heard of Inglewood, Chicago? Okay, so for those of you who do not know, Inglewood is what some people call the murder capital of Chicago. The median income there is about $21,000 a year. Teenagers, y'all don't understand money yet, but I'm just saying right now, you can't live off $21,000 a year. It's just a place. Obviously, there was a lot of crime, a lot of poverty, but this is where my mom worked, and she worked in this clinic that serviced this community specifically. So there was a dentist in the clinic. I don't like this mic. There was a dentist in the clinic. There was a pediatrician, a family practice physician, and obviously there was a gynecologist, there was a physician on site. And this is where they went to get their health care. And a lot of these patients were taking advantage of, state-funded health insurance in order to get their care. Now, my mama was like, she was the receptionist, but she was really the boss of her boss. And she also could not afford childcare, so that meant that I spent a lot of my summers at this clinic with her. You know, when you go to the doctor's office, they have all these pamphlets, right? It's like they have this display with all this stuff you can read. and this was a gynecologist's office, so it was like, the different stages of pregnancy and STDs and STIs, are sexually transmitted diseases and infections, for folks who don't know, and, abortion and different methods of contraception, intimate partner violence. And when I tell you, I would read every single one of them front to back. Even the ones on breastfeeding. I was like 11 years old. Like, yes, ask me about lactation. I can tell you, right? And it's because I was fast. I was a fast-ass girl. Now, I'm curious. When y'all hear the word fast, I don't know if that's the word that they still using, but just like, what are some of like the meanings? Like, what does that word mean? You can just shout them out. Hot. What else? What does even hot mean? When somebody get called fast, what does that mean? What'd you say? Growing up too fast. It's okay. Y'all can be candid. Y'all ain't gonna get in trouble. All over the place. But usually there's a sexual component in there, right? Too, like, right. Okay. So I want to kind of debunk that, because based on my experience, being fast, really at the heart of it, it meant that I was really curious. I was very curious about sex. Absolutely. I was curious about my body. I was very curious about what all these things, I just was curious about it. People always talk about, around black girls, they start talking about sex, they get real like hush toned about it. Like, and so I was like, well, what y'all talking about? I was always in grown people business. So I was like, well, what is it? What is going on? And in a lot of ways, I was in the best position to actually explore that curiosity, because I was in this space where I had nothing but access to all of this information, right? Now, because I was fast, y'all can probably imagine where this is headed. I wanted to get in the field with it, if you will, with the curiosity. And so a lot of you are probably thinking like, okay, cool. Like, at least you had all the information. At least you knew all the stuff, right? You read all the pamphlets. You knew I knew about the condoms, right? I knew about I knew of the same stuff that a lot of, honestly, you all have probably heard. Has anybody here ever heard? Raise your hand if you've ever heard that abstinence is the only 100% way to prevent pregnancy and STIs. Raise your hand if you've ever heard that anywhere. Okay. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of a condom. Raise your hand if you know what a condom is supposed to do. Exactly. We all know it, right? Speaking to the choir. So you would think I had this knowledge, and I go out and I start having sex, like it went great. I was making all the right decisions and I was doing all the right things. I was not. I was having sex with people I shouldn't have been having sex with. I was having sex in places I shouldn't have been. I was engaged in risky behaviors. Actually, I had literally contracted an STI before I was even out of high school. Don't panic, it's okay. They gave me an antibiotic, knocked it out, it's okay. But it was so funny because I was literally at the nail shop. It was actually, I was getting ready for prom. And I'm at the nail shop and I get the phone call from the doctor. And she's like, okay, it's cool, don't trip. Like, I'm gonna send you this prescription, everything gonna be fine. Like, and she said something else. She was like, you are extremely smart. You're so capable. You have such a great life ahead of you. You have done the right thing, because I think she was so excited that I had even come in to get a screening in the first place. And I'm sitting next to my mama, who I am, God forbid, finds out about any of this. And I'm trying to act normal, like, okay, girl, I'm pretending like I'm on the phone with my homegirl. Okay, girl, yeah, I'll be there. I'll pick you up. No problem. Nails in one hand, on the phone in the other, trying to digest this information. And so the question for me has always been, what happened, right? How was it that I had all of this, information that essentially should have prevented me from being in that predicament, and I was still out here down bad, right? And it's because I lacked what I personally think is actually the most important thing that Black women and girls really need when it comes to having a healthy sexuality. The information is important, but really what I lacked was actually a politic or an understanding of how important my own pleasure was. So I want to read a quote from you all from my book real quick, where I kind of talked about this a little bit. And it says, unfortunately, too many of us, and by us I mean Black girls and women, too many of us learn the risks and the damages our sexuality can cause first. We learn about our own pleasure last, if we ever do. Yes, knowing that I've always had access to safe and legal contraceptions, abortion, sexual health screenings have made me a better hoe. But I had to experience a lot of harm because I didn't have a strong framework of consent, supportive spaces where I could talk through some of my experiences with people other than my close group of peers, or a sex education curriculum that also incorporated things like compatibility, chemistry, and autonomy. Do people know what the word autonomy means? Raise your hand if you know what autonomy means. Okay, so autonomy is basically another word for personal independence, personal agency, the ability to make decisions, the ability, is basically your freedom, essentially. And that is an important part of who we are as people that we need to have. And I close that line out with, imagine the different decisions I could have made if I had. That's what I wanted and what I still want for Black girls. Let me get to my notes. So I read all of these pamphlets, obviously, and I think I thought that I was in like some type of game, like a video game simulation. I was like, okay, I know that A plus B equals C, and so if I just plug those numbers in, everything will work out like, you know, it was supposed to, like I thought it would. But that's not, we're not out here, I'm just tell y'all right now, just in case any of y'all think that, when you get out here in the trenches, and some of y'all know this because some of y'all already are. It is not a simulation. It is real life. And I think for Black girls in particular, not only are we not walking into a simulation, we're actually walking into a world that thinks that they inherently know more about us than we do. Black girls are constantly met with all of these assumptions about who we are. All of these, and based on those assumptions about who we are, there are all these rules that we supposed to follow that other people have said. Like, you need to be more ladylike, you have to act like this, you have to speak like this, you have to dance like this, you have to be in relationships that look like this, and this is what you should and what you shouldn't do. I mean, like, just think about it. Right now, everybody's talking about these podcasts of these men who have made it their job to tell women, how to act. Y'all know, y'all might be too young. Do young people listen to podcasts, or is that like a 30-something thing? Okay, so some of y'all know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of conversation right now about all these podcasts that are, that these men host that are essentially set up to tell Black women about how to be Black women. And that really is how the rest of the world operates. And that is the world that I was walking into. And by walking into that world without an assumption of what I needed was honestly dangerous. And it put me at risk because none of those pamphlets, for all the ways I knew how to put a condom on a banana, right? None of those pamphlets said anything about like trying to figure out what felt good to me, about how finding out what that is, communicating that to another person. None of those pamphlets even said sex should feel good. Sex should be an experience that you have that you look forward to in a day. Like you should be getting flashbacks. Like, whoo! Like, yeah, when people joke about that, that's real. That's how sex is supposed to be. It's supposed to be fire. It's supposed to be an experience that is monumental in your life. It's supposed to be something you look forward to. It's supposed to feel good. It's supposed to be able to relieve stress. Sex, you get to burn in some calories. Those are the things that people do not ever talk to Black girls about sex, because the only thing that they want you to know about sex is that, like, oh girl, that's dangerous, be careful, you're gonna get pregnant, you're gonna get an STD, and like, that's the worst thing that could happen to you, right? Y'all can tell me if I'm lying, but that's how it was, at least when I was coming up. That's how people was not telling me about anything about sex other than that, like, if you don't do it right, it's gonna have horrific consequences. And I want to read another passage that I wrote about, like, how specifically dangerous that is. Or just not even how dangerous it is, but what it often looks like in our lives. The only thing scarier to society than a Black girl having sex is the idea that she might be facilitating that sex on her own terms and liking it. Attempts to kill Black girls' sexuality are meant to work proactively from the inside out. The first casualty of this rhetoric is the very idea of pleasure itself. Denial, surveillance, threats, and shame are all imposed on us to create a process of self-regulation and discipline. So the joys of intimacy, the stuff I just mentioned a second ago, and passion are kept secret. And many of us develop our first crushes, our experiences with our first kiss, for me, our first sexual experiences, under a blanket of shame. Black girls don't get the birds and the bees talk. At least not the ones I knew didn't. We get, I better not catch you messing around with none of these little boys. We get, don't come up in here pregnant. We get, ain't gonna be no fucking in my house. We get, sometimes the most positive we get is that a family member might notice, like you getting a little thick or like you walk different, and they'll like pull you to the side at Thanksgiving like, you fucking yet? But then we know it's a setup, and we in trouble if we do, right? All of this conditioning is meant to get Black girls to a place where they just know better when it comes to sex. We're supposed to be aware that sex is an option, a temptation or threat swirling around us at all times. But we're supposed to know better than to act on it or even talk about it. If we discover that it feels really good to have certain parts of our bodies touched or stimulated, we're supposed to know better than to take advantage of that sensation. All this conditioning really does is keep us isolated. Navigating desire and sex becomes a solo journey that we have to explore without the support of our families, our churches, our schools, and the consequences of this isolation are grave. And obviously, it's not just because we know the risks of STIs and STDs, but it's because we are further encouraged to go out into a world where we actually don't have control over what we want, over how we want it, over who we want, and what it's supposed to be like when we can self-determine our own happiness and our own pleasure and our own joy. Now, I'm running a long time, and I promised that I would be the one to get us back on track, but I do just want to leave y'all with a little something. So earlier I talked about being an entertainment journalist, and I talked specifically about how a lot of my work is on women in hip hop. Like I've always had a fascination with like female rappers. Like that has just always, I always tell people like Trina helped raise me, okay? That's how in it I was. Love the rap girls. I host a podcast where I interview the rap girls all the time. Like that's my work, that's my job. And the reason I actually was so fascinated with that is because when you think about it, and I didn't recognize this when I was younger, I had to put this together as I was older, and I was first starting to talk about trap feminism. Who is the person who can tell you what they want, how they want it, and how they not gonna argue with you about it more than a female rapper? If you think about your favorite verse or your favorite bar from a female rapper right now, just think about it. What is she talking about? She's talking about something that she wants, something that she likes, and how she's gonna go and get it, and how you better get on the bus with her about it or get lost. Whether it's money, whether it's a certain kind of relationship. Now, sometimes the girls get a little sad. I know y'all like Summer Walker and stuff now, but I don't like listening to people who whine about, I don't like listening to music where women whine about niggas all the time. But that's neither here nor there. That's neither here nor there. But the rap girls have it figured out. And so I want to leave y'all with two things. And especially for the folks who are in their 20s and the folks who are in their 30s, this is also particularly important for you to hear, because I will say Black girls know who they are from a very young age. And then we go out into the world and a bunch of other people tell us that we're not that. So for the teenagers, I'm going to leave y'all alone right now because y'all got it. It's for the older people who are in these people's lives that I really want to talk to right now. The first thing I want to say is let the girls be bad bitches. And here's what I mean by that. A lot of the ways that we police and surveil Black girls have a lot to do with minor things like how they present their appearance. Your shorts are too short, your crop top is too cropped, your hair is too red, when you walk you switching too hard, when you need to operate within these certain parameters. And obviously a lot of that is important just for understanding time and place, understanding how to move in different circumstances. But if it's just for the sake of presenting her as more ladylike or less sexual, let's actually talk about what that really does. What you're actually telling her is that how she feels about herself and about her body, right, is not the most important opinion. That it's the opinion of somebody else, how her body exists in the world. That is the first step to some real terrible and some real dangerous sex. When you walk into a situation not even feeling like your body is your responsibility. That means you let the other person in the room dictate to you what should and should not be happening. And I had to learn that actually the hard way, because in case y'all haven't noticed, I'm fat. I don't know if nobody saw that, But that was one of the things I actually, unfortunately, did not learn until I was in my 20s. I had to understand how all the ways that I had been taught to think about my body as like undesirable, as not cute, as needing to be hidden away, shouldn't exist, all of those other things. How was that also like impacting the way I was engaging with people intimately? So, one, let the girls be bad bitches. That saying, your body is a temple, right? That's what I mean by that. Let them adorn it how they want to. Let them feel like they own it, like it's the most important thing in the room, because it is, period. And the other thing I will leave you all is give them the game. We do not talk to girls about our negative or positive experiences with sex and relationships, because we think that is exposing them to something that they shouldn't be exposed to. But what you're actually doing is creating a point of disidentification in a way, like, who will they ever have to identify with? Who will they ever have to, I will never forget that trying to work out some of these different conversations about, like, I asked this dude to use a condom and he said that he didn't want to use one. Like, how do I work around that? If that is not a conversation that you are not creating an environment for a girl to come and talk to you about, you're not doing it right, and you're not giving them the actual game that they need to be safe in this world. And for what? So that's all I got to say about that. Thank y'all so much. You can follow me, as I mentioned, on socials at Bad Fat Black Girl. My name is Sesali. My book is out. It's also called Bad Fat Black Girl. It's available wherever books are sold. And I will be sticking around a little bit for questions in case any of y'all want to kiki. And thank y'all so much.
Are there any questions?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess we can take some questions now.
Are there any questions for Ms. Bowen?
Any questions for the room? If not, you want to ask me something privately, you can as well. Yes. Mm-hmm. 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 Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I want to say in response to that is that obviously people in general have a lot more access to information than we ever did before, because everybody has a smartphone, everybody has Google right here. But the thing about Google is that, like, Google is like those pamphlets I was reading. Google is not going to tell you how to actually, like, navigate a situation with somebody that you might love, somebody that you're close to, somebody who is also a person who is also bringing all of their baggage. Those are experiences that you only learn from other people who have been in that situation. And so I really appreciate that you are doing that, because there are just some things that you cannot get from somebody that you cannot actually talk to in person. Let the girls be bad bitches. And people are going to act accordingly, period. There is nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong with being confident, and there is nothing wrong with thinking that you deserve to be treated with respect, and do not let anybody tell you any differently, period. Yes. Last question. I want to make sure we don't get too off time. Yes. You said my tips on negotiating boundaries. So I think first and foremost, I actually really love that you asked that question, because I have a whole chapter on this. I get this thing where people always say, "Oh my God, you're so confident. I wish I had your confidence." And what I always tell people is that, like, confidence is actually like, it's really just half the battle, because confidence is really just getting to a place where you kind of know yourself, where you think that you are human enough to be treated with basic human decency and kindness and respect. But it's actually knowing the boundaries, setting the boundaries. It's called having standards. That is actually the game changer, and that's actually what dictates your life. And so what I would actually, my first tip around that is, first of all, like, knowing what the boundaries are. Really take time to, like, reflect on situations in which you have been uncomfortable, situations that, or on the flip side of that, situations that have brought you immense joy. And honestly, what life is about always trying to create more situations that have the joy and less situations that have made you uncomfortable, that have put you in a position where you have been in danger, where you have been hurt. When you are able to recognize those things, take an honest stock of, okay, how did I get here? What was I doing that put me in the joy category in the column, and what was I doing that put me in the other column? And you literally start to set the boundaries based on, okay, I'm not participating in things that leave me depressed, in danger, unsatisfied, unhappy, and I want to do more of the things that, like, actually create joy for me. If you know that you hate that your clothes always smell like weed, all right, y'all, I'm gonna go let y'all hotbox the car out. I'm gonna step outside. Period. That's the boundary. That was not me. I personally love the smell of weed. I just used, that was the first example that I thought of. That was the first example that I personally thought of. But, you know, I use that because that's actually a very small example. And that's important, to just even be able to say what you like and what you don't like. And you'd be surprised at just how often we don't let Black girls do that. We just expect them to show up for everybody else. And so, yeah, that's my tips. Know what the boundaries are, and just move towards them. It's really that simple. Intuitive, a lot of us, we already know, like, the things that make us happy. We already know a lot of the things that don't, you know, and in life we'll discover more things that fall into both categories. But the goal should always be to reach for one or the other. One last question? If not, you can also come up to me and talk to me after. If not, thank y'all so much.